Welcome back to the unit on linear relationships. Today's lesson is about fraction and decimal increases and decreases. The goals of today's lesson are that you represent a fraction as a decimal and that you can represent fraction and decimal increases and decreases with tape diagrams, tables, and equivalent expressions with fractions and decimals. So first, to represent a fraction as a decimal, the numerator is the number above the fraction bar in your fraction, and the denominator is the number below. And to represent a fraction as a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. So 7 divided by 5. I'm going to write 7 like this. So 7 divided by 5 goes once, subtract 5. I get 2, bring down a 0. 20 divided by 5 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. So that's that. And I put the decimal place above the decimal place in the numerator. Put it here. So 7/5 is equal to 1.4. And let's do it with 4/3. Same thing. Let's divide the numerator by the denominator. So 4 divided by 3 is once, so subtract 3, left with 1, bring down a 0. 10 divided by 3 is 3, 3 times 3 is 9, subtract 9, I get 1 again, bring down a 0. So I'm seeing a 10 again, divide by 3 I get 3, subtract 9, I get 1 again. So this is going to repeat indefinitely. I'm going to keep getting 3s like this. So this is a repeating decimal. Here's your decimal place. And we would write it like this. 4/3 is equal to 1.3 repeating. Representing half as much again. So the turtle walked 10 feet. Let's draw a tape diagram. Here's 10 feet. And half as that length again. Let's take this. That's about half. So one of those, that's half. Here's half as much again. And we could represent it in a table. We could walked. And then half as much again. And total. So we'll need 3 columns. So they walked 10 feet. Half as much again is 5 feet, because 5 is half of 10, and your total is 15 feet. And with a fraction, we would say we walked once, we'd walk 10 feet, and then half as much again, so half of 10 feet. And we can use the distributive property here. 1 times 10 feet and a half times 10 feet is 1.5 times 10 feet. And we can also write that as a improper fraction, 3/2 times 10 feet. And using decimals, we'd say 1 times 10 feet plus 0.5, because that's half, times 10 feet is 1.5 times 10 feet. And all of these are equal to 15 feet, which we saw in the tape diagram and the table. We can represent these with variables. Here we have a variable, x. So she walked 1 times x meters, and half that again, so a half times x meters for 1.5 times x meters. Or we could make that an improper fraction, 3/2 times x meters. And if we want to write that with decimals, we'd have 1 times x decimals, 0.5 for the half as much again. equals 1.5x meters. So increasing by other fractions, so we could say here she planned to walk for x kilometers, but then she walked 3/4 more than she had planned. So we can draw a tape diagram like this. This was her planned walk, x kilometers. And we want to see what 3/4 more would look like. So let's get this into fourths. So that's each of those blocks is 1/4, and she did 3/4 more than she had planned. So this is 3/4 x more. And increasing by a fraction, we have 1x is what she had planned, but then she did 3/4 x more. So that's, if we use the distributive property, 1 and 3/4 x kilometers. And we can do increases and decreases with decimals. So she planned to walk for x kilometers, but she decreased her walk by 0.25 of her planned distance. So again, I can draw x kilometers, and each of these blocks is 0.25, because 4 times 0.25 is equal to 1. That's 1x. So she planned to walk 1x, but she walked less. So I'm going to subtract how much less she walked. She walked 0.25x less, and 1x minus 0.25x is 0.75x kilometers. So she walked 0.75 of her planned walk. So to summarize, a fraction can be represented by a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. A tape diagram or a table helps to clarify the amount of an increase or decrease, and expressions can be written as equivalent expressions by rewriting them using the distributive property. So to recall today's goals, you saw how to represent a fraction as a decimal and how to represent increases and decreases with tape diagrams, tables, and equivalent expressions with fractions and decimals. And that's the end of